Amongst Dragon Ball's characters, Son Gohan's future self is one of the more misunderstood ones when it comes to his purpose in the narrative, for the reasons he's worth praising. Most people will like or even prefer him to his main timeline self, for surface level things, such as him being a badass. And though there's some truth to that in his admirable qualities, that's only the tip of the iceberg for him being a well-realized character. Going over the surface level aspects, he acts as a good comparison to how the Gohan we know better would be if fully embracing a battle-hardened path, as well as being willing to lay down his life for someone he sees as being able to correct the mistakes of those who came before him, showcasing elements of both his father and mentor in a way that perfectly shows what his experiences with both have brought about. It's when thinking more on this, however, that we discover the flaw that led to Gohan not awakening anywhere near the level of dormant power as his History 1 self. Gohan's lessons from Piccolo provided very little in terms of meaningful advice beyond don't get yourself killed, as we see from Piccolo's lessons not helping when facing Nappa, with the moments where Gohan shined in the Saiyan arc being more instinctual and brought about by Gohan's desire to protect his loved ones, with Goku not providing him any advice towards ki cultivation or battle tactics in this timeline, and forcing Gohan's embodying of Goku's ideals being based on what he could observe from the battles with Nappa, the Ginyu Tokusentai, and Frieza. This is the flaw of future Gohan, in having not received the right tutelage to help him thrive, having to figure everything out on his own when suddenly made Earth's last defense against 17 and 18, along with the more battle-hardened attitude making him desensitized enough that he cannot benefit from the rage boosts he used to, something always brought about by his compassion for others based on the emotional value the victim of his enemy had to him. There's also how this links to Toriyama's elaboration on S-cells being cultivated better in a peaceful environment, as we also see when comparing both versions of Trunks, which, if not realizing how well this ties into what the original manga displays or the series' Buddhist ideas, you may want to see this older video concerning it. This also ties into the core idea of the Cell arc, with Goku being a necessity in the protection of Earth, with it being his tutelage and emotional support that allowed History 1's Gohan to overcome Cell, and prove himself someone Goku could entrust things to until unpredictable events occurred, and even then, Goku's presence is what created the domino effect leading to Buu's awakening before he gained everyone's help to resolve it. With Goku's presence, it's worth sidetracking to a common point of confusion some have about the future timeline, being why didn't future Goku come to help Gohan, or why didn't they use the Namekian Dragon Balls, both of which show how misunderstood or forgotten many aspects of the Dragon world are. Goku is only allowed to return to the living world through Baba taking him, with the most obvious implication through her future self not doing so being that she lost her life to the twins early on. Even though Enma was a little lenient to the rules in the Buu arc, that was against someone who threatened the whole universe, whereas a crisis of just one planet was something he'd be far more impartial towards. The more vocal idea that they should have had Kaio inform others of New Namek's location is a more clearly nonsensical one, as all the factors as to why are obvious if paying attention to what had been said. New Namek's location doesn't seem to be one he could pinpoint coordinates for, when all situations of it being found had been through key sensing, and even if he did, Buruma being able to build a ship capable of travelling there would require a lot of cross-referencing of her father's designs, and hiding something that'd be a pretty big target. Even if getting there, the 1-year rule on mass revivals means only 3 people could be revived at a time, and that's not even taking into account how many of the Dragon Team would have kept their body in the other world, prefer the living world to what they become accustomed to, or, in the case of Vegeta, being reincarnated. Even the idea Goku could have told Gohan about the Room of Spirit and Time is very debatable when it's implied in the manga and confirmed in the Super anime that Karin was killed, with it following 17 and 18 would soon find the floating temple above Karintor a ripe target. This being something people cite as Toriyama not knowing what he was doing with the original manga is a pretty clear example of the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. That tangent aside, Future Gohan having to teach himself leads into what makes him a tragic character. That is in the correct usage of the term as a character whose downfall is brought about by their character flaws. Though entrusting his ideals to Trunks, his decision to charge in alone was brought about by his hatred towards the weak being oppressed, overriding what seemed rational, much like against Dodoria, along with being a toned-down version of his other self's trademark overconfidence when seeming strong enough, with him at least believing he could take down 17 before clearly having miscalculated the situation. This is also one thing that Trunks the story does better than the alternate take in the TV special, wherein Gohan is far more resigned to entrusting things to Trunks alone, rather than his downfall being partially from hubris, which to some extent makes the manga version a microcosm of the messages within the Cell game and the fight with Evil Boo. Another core aspect of a tragic character is that their demise is necessary to drive the story, and this is true of Future Gohan, in this being seemingly possible to avoid, but inevitable for his character even without prior knowledge of Trunks' timeline, which is why his death evokes emotions from many viewers. Now that I think of it, Future Gohan is quite comparable to Portgas the Ace from One Piece when it comes to how their end affected the trajectory of the characters around them, with how being unable to save Ace was the nail in the coffin for Luffy realizing he and his crew needed more time to take on the new world. That's far from tangential though, as Future Gohan does the same in an even more cyclical way, even if applying the time machine having been in development before his death in the TV special as part of the manga continuity. Gohan and Trunks' attitude still seem to be one set on fixing the world through their own strength, and had he not went to face the twins, they'd have likely both fallen at some point before going back in time. It's through Gohan's death, leaving Trunks without guidance, that the events of the past unfolded as they did, and Goku's influence and advice helping both a different one-armed Gohan being able to stop the endgame of Gero's ambitions, and allow Trunks to gain what was necessary to defend his own world, for the original manga at least, making Future Gohan the necessary martyr to end a conflict that would span space and time. As climactic of a note as that would be for this analysis, a coda must be brought in, when I'd be remiss not to talk about the different dynamic between this Gohan and his mother. From the TV special as well as its expansion in Kakarot, we can tell Gohan has become distant from her, which may actually be the most stark contrast from his more well-known self. The rebellious aspects after his time with Piccolo having fully emerged when losing his father, and being shouldered with responsibility once the rest of the Dragon Team went, which was incompatible with Chi-Chi's wishes to help shield him from the suffering Goku's lifestyle placed onto him. The manga also implies this, with Gohan sparring with Trunks clearly nowhere near the East District. The detrimental effect this has on Chi-Chi, compared to any of Goku's absences, says a lot to the importance Gohan has to her, as well as the difficult decisions this Gohan had to make for the greater good, to add another layer to his complexity. Overall, Future Gohan plays his role excellently in helping the Cell arc come full circle, and being a stark contrast to his other self, that, while not being to all fans' preference, was allowed to fulfill his scholarly ambitions, while having the incentive to bring out the depths of his potential through the sacrifice of this warrior who had lost so much. Thank you you if haven't watched through this analysis. Though Future Gohan's fate was perfect for the narrative, the popularity of what ifs makes one wonder how things could go if he were able to travel to the past, a request of which I'll fulfill in time.